Welcome to Creepy Night, where shadows speak and stories never truly die. Tonight, we open another tale, one whispered through fog, born of fear, and written in blood. So, turn off the lights and listen.
The carriage creaked and groaned as it rolled through the fog-drowned valley. The air smelled of rain and rot, the earth black and glistening from a recent storm. Within the carriage sat Lydia Maren, her gloved hands clutched around a folded letter, creased, stained, and trembling faintly in her grip. The voices have returned. The board will not be still. Come home at once. That was all her father had written before his silence. The letter's words throbbed in her mind as the wheels struck loose stones, the motion of the carriage matching the tremor in her pulse. Lydia had not seen her father in nearly 10 years, not since she'd fled Maren Hall, swearing never to return. Now, she was being drawn back to the same valley that had birthed her nightmares. Outside, the forest pressed close to the road. Bare branches reached over the path like skeletal hands, scraping against the carriage roof, as if trying to claw their way inside. The driver, an old man wrapped in a damp coat, broke the silence. "We'll reach the manor before nightfall, miss. Though I'd not stay there if it were me." Lydia met his eyes through the lantern light. "You wait for me until morning." The man's face tightened. "If the fog allows it." The carriage lurched forward again, swallowed by the mist. By the time they reached the gates of Maren Hall, twilight had surrendered to night. The iron bars loomed ahead, twisted, corroded, almost skeletal. The family crest had long since rusted away, but the name beneath was still faintly legible. Hollow Vale. Lydia stepped down into the chill air. Her boots sank slightly into the mud, the ground soft as if something beneath it still breathed. The gate creaked open at her touch. The sound echoed up the valley like the cry of something waking. Maren Hall rose from the fog beyond, a sprawling ruin of a house, its windows dark, its chimneys cold. Once it had been white stone. Now it was the color of ash. She hesitated at the threshold, then pushed open the heavy door. It yielded slowly, groaning as if resentful of her return. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. The grand hall stretched before her, lined with portraits of long-dead Marens. Their painted eyes seemed to follow her every step. The chandelier overhead swayed slightly, though no wind stirred. A layer of dust coated everything, but the candles upon the central table were freshly burned, the wax still warm to the touch. Lydia frowned. "Father." Her voice was swallowed by the vastness of the hall. From somewhere deeper in the house came the faint sound of something scraping, slow, deliberate. She followed it, each step echoing off the walls until she reached the drawing room. There, upon the table, lay the object she had dreaded most, the spirit board. It gleamed faintly in the dim light. The planchette rested upon it, its glass window reflecting the trembling flame of a single candle that should not have been burning. Beside the board sat a note, written in her father's sharp, hurried hand. "Do not touch the board again. It speaks even when no one calls." Lydia's breath caught. Then, from the corner of the room, came a sound. A faint scrape. The planchette moved. Wait. She froze. It slid slowly across the board, the wood whispering beneath it. Hello. Her pulse thundered in her throat. Father. The planchette paused, then slid again. No. Lydia's hands trembled. Then... who? The planchette began to move faster, each motion harsh and urgent. W-E-W-A-I-T. The candle flickered. The shadows swelled. Her breath turned to mist as the air grew cold. Wait for what? She whispered. The planchette stilled. A long silence followed. Then a voice, soft, near, and wrong, breathed against her ear. For you! Lydia spun, heart pounding, but no one was there. Only the portraits stared down from the walls, their painted faces twisted by flickering light. She turned back to the table. The board was still now. The planchette had moved again, resting upon a single word. Yes. When she finally found the courage to move, she fled the room and climbed the staircase, her boots stirring clouds of dust. At the top of the stairs, the corridor stretched long and narrow, lined with closed doors. Only one was open, her father's study. Light spilled out, a faint, unnatural glow. She entered slowly. The smell hit her first. Ink, smoke, and something metallic beneath it. Blood. Papers littered the desk, covered in strange circular diagrams and Latin phrases. And there, slumped in the chair, was her father. His skin was gray, his eyes wide and glassy. The quill had fallen from his hand, and beneath it, burned into the wood of the desk, were words that seemed to shimmer faintly in the candlelight. We spoke. Now you will listen. Lydia's scream filled the hall. The candlelight flared, casting the shadow of her father's corpse against the wall. And in that shadow, another shape stood behind her, tall and still. The air turned to ice. The whisper came again, closer this time. Welcome back. Lydia stumbled backward, her breath caught in her throat. The whisper still seemed to curl through the room like smoke, lingering though the air was still. Her father's lifeless eyes glinted faintly in the candlelight, fixed upon something over her shoulder. She turned. Nothing. Only the mirror above the fireplace, its surface cracked and clouded with age. Her reflection trembled in it, wide-eyed, pale, a ghost among ghosts. She steadied herself against the desk, swallowing the rising panic. It's only the house, she whispered. Old wood, old air, nothing more. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. The planchette on the board trembled once more. She crossed the room and stared down at it. It hadn't been here earlier. The board was different, older, perhaps the same one her father had once used. The wood was nearly black, and the letters carved deeper, filled with dust and something darker. She took a step back. You can't be real. The planchette moved sharply, as though struck from below. Lydia. Her name. Oh, no. She backed away. No, I didn't ask anything. The board rattled against the desk. The planchette spun in tight, frantic circles before slamming to a stop. S-T-A-Y. Lydia's voice broke. "What do you want?" The air pressed down upon her, heavy and wet, as if the entire house inhaled at once. Toplayy. The candle nearest to her exploded, showering her hand with wax. She screamed, stumbling backward, and the entire desk shuddered. Books fell to the floor, scattering loose papers, marked with her father's handwriting. Among them, one sheet caught her eye, drawn in shaky, ink-smeared lines, a diagram of the board surrounded by unfamiliar symbols. At its center, a single phrase written in Latin, Ordian tenebrae silumen daciat. She translated it under her breath, her voice shaking. "The darkness will listen when the light falls silent." As if in answer, every candle in the room went out. Darkness swallowed her whole. The silence that followed was so complete, she could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Then, a creak from the far corner. Someone was in the room with her. She turned toward the sound, hands groping for the matches on the desk, but something brushed past her shoulder. Cold, weightless, gone in an instant. Her shaking fingers found a match. She struck it against the desk edge. The flame flared, and she saw him. Her father stood in the far corner of the room. His head hung low, his arms limp at his sides, but his feet didn't touch the floor. Lydia froze. "Father!" The head lifted. The face that looked at her wasn't her father's anymore. The eyes were hollow, black pits that reflected nothing. The mouth opened, and the voice that came from it was layered. Dozens of tones speaking as one. "You opened the door." The match burned her fingers. She dropped it, and the flame went out. When she awoke, dawn had broken. She lay on the floor of her father's study, the boards cold beneath her cheek. The board was gone. The candles were melted to stubs. The window was open, fog drifting in like breath from a sleeping beast. Had it been a dream? Her body ached too much for that. Her hand was blistered where the wax had struck. She rose, dizzy, and stumbled to the window. The valley below lay drowned in white mist, the trees like black skeletons. From somewhere within the fog came the faint, rhythmic sound of tapping, 3 beats, then silence. Again, 3 beats, then silence. It sounded like a hand rapping wood, like someone waiting. Downstairs, she found the great hall colder than before. The portraits seemed darker, the air heavier. The fire had not been lit in days. She made her way toward the front door, her only thought to leave, to run, until the valley itself was nothing but a memory. But when she pulled at the handle, it didn't move. The door was locked. She turned, scanning the hall. Every window was shrouded in frost. The keyhole was black, empty. And then she saw the message carved into the wood of the door itself, letters gouged deep and raw, as though by fingernails. "The board stays. You stay." Lydia staggered back, pressing a hand to her mouth. The tapping came again, closer now, from the parlor. Her father's voice whispered inside her skull, faint but certain. "Do not touch the board again, Lydia. It speaks when no one calls." But the sound in the next room was not a voice calling. It was knocking, waiting, inviting. The parlor door creaked open before she reached it. The board sat upon the table, perfectly centered, as though it had never been touched. The planchette rested on the word hello. The air was still, but the letters gleamed faintly, as if slick with dew. Lydia took one trembling step forward. "What are you?" she whispered. The planchette moved. "O-U-R-S. Then, slowly, N-O-W. The house shuddered, as if it had taken a breath. The fog outside pressed against the windows, thicker, darker, alive. And somewhere beneath her feet, deep in the foundations of Maren Hall, something tapped 3 times in reply. Morning brought no warmth to Hollow Vale. The fog had thickened overnight, crawling up the valley walls and pressing against the manor's windows like a living thing. The sun was no more than a pale blur behind the clouds, and every sound inside Maren Hall seemed swallowed by the heavy silence that followed. Lydia Maren sat at her father's desk, staring at the note he had left her. The ink had begun to fade, but the words burned still. "Do not touch the board again. It speaks when no one calls." She had read the warning 100 times since dawn. It made no difference. The board waited for her downstairs, patient as stone. She could feel it, its presence humming faintly through the floorboards like the echo of a heartbeat. It was awake, and it wanted her. When the clock in the hall struck noon, the sound startled her from her thought. Each toll reverberated through the house, shaking loose the dust from portraits and rafters. 12 strokes. Then silence. And after the silence, 3 soft knocks. Lydia froze. The sound came from below. She rose, her chair scraping across the floor. "No," she whispered, "not again." But she was already moving toward the door. The corridor stretched long and cold, the air dense with the scent of damp wood. As she descended the staircase, she saw the parlor door half open, the faintest glimmer of candlelight spilling through the crack. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, warning her. But curiosity was stronger than fear. When she entered the room, the candles were already lit. The board rested where it had been before, its planchette perfectly still. Only one difference. Beside it sat a chair, pulled out as though for her. Lydia's pulse quickened. "I don't believe in you," she said softly, though her voice shook. The board did not move. "I don't," she repeated. "You're just wood and letters and..." The planchette shifted. Lydia. Her breath hitched. She. She stared at the empty chair. Every sensible thought told her to run, to flee into the fog, to leave this cursed place behind. But something deep within her stirred. A faint, impossible pull, like a thread tightening around her chest. She sat. The air grew colder. The candle flames bent toward her, flickering in rhythm with her heartbeat. She laid her fingertips upon the planchette. It was warm. "Who are you?" she whispered. For a moment, nothing. Then the planchette slid slowly, deliberately. Alther. Lydia frowned. Alther. The planchette circled yes. "Are you someone my father knew?" ATWUSALL. She felt a chill run through her bones. "What do you mean?" The planchette began to move faster, the wood scraping sharply. WEGIMTHEWODSS. The words. TOSPEA. K. The candles flared violently, their flames stretching high, shadows writhing along the walls. Lydia's chair trembled beneath her. She tore her hands from the board. "Stop it!" she cried. But the planchette continued to move on its own, gliding furiously now. DONOTRUN. What do you? EHAVEWAIT. Edu. YOURETHEKEY. Her heart hammered. The key to what? The planchette spun once, then stopped upon a single word. OPNN. The room seemed to darken around her, and from the shadows behind her a voice, not the one from before, but something older, deeper, whispered her name. Lydia. She turned. No one stood there. Only the mirror over the mantel, cracked and dust blurred, reflecting not one image but three. Herself, her father behind her, and something else standing farther back, indistinct, faceless. The reflection smiled. A gust of wind shattered the mirror. The candles blew out, plunging the room into darkness. Lydia fell to the floor, covering her head as glass rained around her. When she looked up again, the board was gone. In its place lay a single slip of parchment, yellow and brittle. Her father's handwriting. The seance is never done, Lydia. The board only sleeps between players. The letters bled as she read them, the ink spreading like veins across the page until new words appeared beneath. Tonight, it wakes again. The fog outside thickened, crawling higher, pressing against the windows like hands. The walls of Maren Hall groaned softly, as though shifting in their foundations. And in the silence between heartbeats, she heard it, the faint, steady tapping from the parlor below. The seance had begun. The sound grew louder. 3 sharp knocks, then silence, then 3 again. The rhythm pulsed through the floorboards, as though the manor itself had learned to breathe. Lydia clutched the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. "No," she whispered. "You won't have me." But the air in the room had changed. It pressed in close, damp and heavy, thick with the scent of iron and old smoke. Every candle she'd lit earlier sputtered, the flames stretching sideways as if drawn toward something unseen. The tapping stopped. For a moment, there was only stillness, then a voice, distant yet unmistakably human. Lydia, her name, spoken from the hall. Soft, familiar, and terribly wrong. She turned toward the door. The shadows there had deepened, swallowing the corners of the room. "Father?" No answer, only a faint laugh, like breath, escaping from a dying throat. Lydia snatched the lantern from the table and stepped into the corridor. The walls seemed to close around her, portraits watching from their dusty frames. The eyes of one, a woman in black lace, appeared wet, glistening as though weeping. She hurried down the stairs. The air was colder here, the fog outside pressing against every window pane. At the base of the staircase, the parlor door stood ajar again, a faint light flickering within. Her stomach clenched. Please, not again. But her feet carried her forward all the same. The parlor was as she'd left it, save for the chair, which now sat opposite where she had been. The spirit board was placed neatly between them. Candles burned on either side, steady and still, their flames undisturbed. Someone or something had been waiting. Lydia's breath misted in the air. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. The planchette began to move before she could take another step. truth. She shook her head. What truth? boutyouffather. Her blood ran cold. My father, the planchette circled yes. die. DIDOTPRAY. What are you saying? HECALEDUS. The candlelight flared, stretching her shadow across the walls. Lydia staggered back. No, you're lying. He wasn't. He was a scholar, a man of science. The planchette spun violently, then slammed against the edge of the board. AEELIEVED. Something banged upstairs. A door slamming open, then shut again. The house shivered with the sound. Lydia turned toward the noise, but a whisper rose from behind her. A whisper not from the board, but from the air itself. You have his hands. She froze. Who said that? No answer. The planchette slid once more, spelling with slow, patient precision. WEARESTILHIS. The flames bent inward, as though drawn toward the board. Lydia took a trembling step forward. If you are what he summoned, then you will answer to me. Silence. Then, faintly, laughter. Low, hollow, endless. The laughter did not come from one voice, but from many, overlapping and fading in and out of each other. It filled the parlor, echoing from the walls, from beneath the floor, from inside her own skull. She clamped her hands over her ears, but it seeped through her bones. Stop it! Stop! The board trembled violently, the planchette spinning faster than before. The letters blurred together until it struck one final word. O-P-E-N. A blast of wind erupted through the room, scattering papers, toppling candles. Lydia stumbled, shielding her face. The fog forced its way through the cracks in the windows, thick and black, spiraling across the ceiling like smoke. Through the roaring wind came her father's voice, faint, desperate, echoing through the chaos. Lydia, don't speak to them. They hear. The voice cut off. The fog slammed into her chest like a wave. She fell backward, the lantern shattering beside her. The flames leapt to life, licking across the floorboards. She crawled toward the doorway, coughing, eyes watering from smoke and fear. Something caught her ankle. A hand, cold and slick, gripping tight. She screamed, kicking free, and rolled into the hall as the parlor burst into fire. By the time she stood again, gasping for air, the flames had vanished. The doorway was dark. When she peered back inside, the parlor looked untouched. No smoke, no ashes. Only the board sat waiting, motionless, innocent. So, Lydia's body shook uncontrollably. She stumbled backward until her spine hit the wall. She had to get out. But when she turned, she saw movement at the far end of the hall. A child stood there. A little girl in a nightdress, her hair damp, her eyes wide and empty. Who are you? Lydia whispered. The girl tilted her head, and when she spoke, her voice was flat and wrong. They said you would come back. Lydia stepped forward, her heart pounding. Who did? The child smiled faintly. Her teeth were black, the ones under the floor. Then she pointed down the corridor toward the cellar door. Lydia followed her gaze, and when she looked back, the girl was gone. The only thing left was a trail of small, wet footprints leading toward the cellar. Lydia stood frozen for a long moment, the sound of the old house groaning around her. Somewhere deep below, she heard the faint tapping again. 3 knocks. Then 3 more. And over it, faint but certain, the voice of her father. "Lydia, come below." The air in Maren Hall was different after the second night, stiller, heavier, as though the house itself were holding its breath. Lydia moved through it in silence, every step echoing like an intrusion. She had not slept. The hours since dawn had been spent pacing the upper halls, replaying the events of the night again and again. The board, the fire that vanished, the girl. She could still see her, that pale face and the way her lips curved when she spoke of the ones under the floor. Lydia had searched for her at first light, but found nothing. Nothing. No footprints, no traces of ash or heat in the parlor. Only the spirit board sat upon the table, clean, unmoving, and perfectly centered, as if the night before had been nothing but a fever dream. Yet, somewhere beneath her feet, the tapping had continued. 3 knocks. I knock. Silence. 3 more. Why, yea. It came and went like a heartbeat, sometimes faint, sometimes sharp enough to rattle the glasses in their cabinet. And each time it came, the air in the house grew colder. By mid-morning, Lydia forced herself toward the cellar door. It was an old oak slab, warped by dampness and age, and she had to push with all her weight to make it yield. The hinges shrieked as they opened. A narrow stairwell descended into the dark. The smell that rose from below was thick and sour, damp earth, mildew, and something metallic beneath it all. She lit a candle and began her descent. Each step groaned beneath her, and dust fell like ash from the beams overhead. The cellar stretched long and low, its brick walls slick with condensation. Wooden crates lined one side, and the remnants of old wine barrels stood in shadows on the other. The tapping came again. Louder, now, Jow. Closer. She lifted the candle high. Who's there? No reply, only the hollow rhythm of knuckles against wood, coming from the far end of the room. As she approached, she saw that part of the floor had collapsed. The earth beneath had sunken inward, leaving a dark hollow surrounded by broken plank. The tapping came from inside it. Lydia knelt, her hand trembling as she brought the candle closer. The flame wavered, light pooling into the pit. Something moved. Ooh. For a moment, she thought it was a trick of shadow, until she saw fingers, small and gray, pressing up through the soil. She fell backward with a gasp, the candle dropping from her hand. Its flame went out. The tapping stopped. Silence. Then, faintly, a child's voice rose from the darkness. "Help me." Lydia scrambled to her feet, snatching the candle and striking a match. The flame flickered to life, trembling as much as her hands. "Who are you?" she whispered. The voice came again, soft and hoarse. "It's cold down here. Please." She edged closer. The fingers were gone now, the soil undisturbed. Only a faint impression remained, like small hands had pressed from below. Her father's voice echoed in memory. "Do not touch the board again." Lydia's throat tightened. "You are not real," she said. "You are not real." But even as she spoke, the candle dimmed, not extinguished, but smothered by something unseen. The voice rose again, closer now, as though the speaker stood just beyond the thin skin of earth. "They buried us here." Lydia's heart thudded. "Who did?" "Them," the voice said. "The ones who played." The candle sputtered and went out. Something brushed against her ankle, soft, cold, and wet. She screamed, stumbling backward, her shoulder striking a stone pillar. Her hand found another match, but it slipped from her fingers, breaking in two. Then, in the dark, she saw them, faint shapes gathering in the blackness. Children, 5 or 6, maybe more. Their eyes glowed faintly blue in the dark, their mouths open in perfect silence. The smallest one stepped forward, the same girl she had seen before. "You shouldn't have come," the girl whispered. Lydia backed away, shaking her head. "What are you?" The girl tilted her head. The echoes of a game that never ended. The walls seemed to hum around her now, a low vibration running through the bricks. The children moved closer, their faces pale as wax. One reached toward her hand, its touch freezing, and she felt a surge of images, flashes of candlelight, her father at the board, his lips moving as if in prayer, the air around him thick with whispers. She tore her hand free, gasping. "He brought you here." The girl nodded slowly. "He asked for answers." "What did he ask?" "To see what waits beyond." The cellar floor cracked. The sound echoed like thunder, and a blast of air surged upward from the hollow. The candle went out again. In the darkness, the girl's voice was a whisper that seemed to come from all directions at once. "He saw. And now you must too." The ground gave way beneath her. Lydia fell through the floor, the air torn from her lungs. She hit earth hard, her candle extinguished somewhere above. The darkness below was thicker, colder, almost solid. She reached out, fingers sinking into damp soil. The smell of rot filled her nose. She tried to stand, but her hands brushed against something smooth. A face. She recoiled, heart pounding. The face was gray, half buried, the eyes open and black. There were others, bodies tangled together, some small, some full-grown, their limbs woven like root. She screamed. The sound echoed endlessly through the pit, swallowed by the dark. When at last she found the strength to move, she crawled toward a faint light above her. The gap in the floor she had fallen through. Shadows moved it. The children's faces looked down, serene and still. Then they began to speak together, their voices merging into one. "Play with us." The earth shifted beneath her knees. Something rose behind her, a sound like cracking wood, then breathing. Slow, wet. She turned. Wah! A shape stood there. It was her father, or what was left of him. His chest was caved inward, his eyes black pits, his fingers crawling with soil. His mouth opened, and when he spoke, the children's voices spoke with him. "You opened the door," Lydia screamed, clawing at the dirt, trying to climb. But his hand caught her wrist, cold and strong. Now the door cannot close. The earth began to swallow them both. The earth swallowed her scream. Lydia clawed upward, nails breaking against the crumbling soil, her lungs burning with the stench of decay. Her father's hand still clutched her wrist, cold, inhumanly strong, dragging her deeper into the pit of corpses. The whispers around her multiplied until they became a single pulsing drone. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" She struck out blindly, her free hand colliding with bone. The impact loosened his grip for an instant, enough for her to wrench free. She scrambled upward, clawing through the wet dirt, pulling herself toward the faint shimmer of candlelight above. The children's faces stared down through the hole, serene, watchful, unblinking. Their whispers were no longer words, but a soft hum, like a lullaby sung underwater. "Please!" Lydia gasped, reaching toward them. "Help me!" The smallest girl, the one she'd seen first, tilted her head. "You can't leave. The door is open now." Then the girl's eyes turned black, and her mouth stretched into a too-wide grin. Hands, hundreds of them, burst from the soil around Lydia's legs, gripping, dragging, pulling her back. She screamed, twisting, kicking. The dirt shifted beneath her weight, and with a desperate cry, she lunged upward, fingers brushing the splintered edge of the floor. Something unseen pushed from below, launching her forward. She fell hard onto the cellar floorboards, gasping, coughing up mud. When she looked down again, the hole had closed. The boards were smooth and whole, as though nothing had ever been there. Only the candle she dropped earlier remained, its flame flickering weakly beside her. She staggered to her feet, trembling violently. Her clothes were soaked, her hands bleeding. The cellar seemed smaller now, the walls pressing in, the air thick with whispers that retreated as she moved toward the stairs. Halfway up, she stopped. A faint voice drifted from below. Lydia. Her father's voice. But this time, it didn't plead. It laughed. When she reached the hall above, dawn had begun to filter through the cracks in the boarded windows. Light spilled in pale beams, revealing streaks of mud across the floor and handprints on the walls. Small, child-sized handprints, leading toward the parlor. The spirit board was there again, waiting for her. It looked older now. The wood was cracked. The letters burned into its surface, as though by fire. The word goodbye had been scratched out entirely, gouged into illegibility. Lydia sank to her knees before it, her body trembling. "What do you want from me?" The planchette moved instantly. R-E-M-E-E-A-R. She shook her head. "I don't understand." H-E-P-R-O-M-I-S-E-D. Who? Yeah, you. K-No-W-I. Her mind raced. My father. H-E-C-A-L-L-E-D. What? Called what? You? I-L-L-O-F-U-S-U-S. Her throat tightened. Why? What do you want? T-H-E-D-O-O-R. Oh, the candles flared. as though breathing in unison with the board. Toopen. And beneath that word, the wood began to crack, widening like a wound. From inside the split came a sound, a heartbeat, slow and deep. Lydia stumbled backward. No, you can't. But the floor beneath her trembled. The portraits on the walls rattled in their frame. The house moaned, the sound rolling through its bones like thunder. THEDOWASNEVE or REANCTO. The letters burned as they appeared, the board smoking, where the planchette moved. "Stop!" she screamed. The board exploded. The candlelight extinguished. And out of the darkness came the voice she had begun to dread more than any other, the one that spoke in her father's tone, but did not belong to him. "You cannot stop what began beneath your blood." The fog pressed harder against the windows now, curling along the cracks in the glass until it slipped inside. It gathered on the ceiling, black and swirling, dripping down the walls like ink. In its shifting form, Lydia saw faces, familiar, twisted, pleading. Her father's among them. They spoke together in a single, terrible whisper. "He offered us the door. You gave us the key." She ran through the hall, past the staircase, through the narrow corridor lined with cracked mirrors and torn wallpaper. The whispers followed her, crawling under her skin, echoing her footsteps. She reached the front door and pulled. It didn't move. Again. Harder. Nothing. The lock turned, but not by her hand. The door opened inward, revealing only fog beyond. So thick, it might as well have been a wall. The moment she stepped closer, a figure emerged within it. Her father. But not as she remembered him. His outline flickered, his skin as pale as the fog itself, his eyes hollow. His voice was a whisper that filled the air. "You left me in the dark, Lydia." She took a step back. "You're not him." He smiled, thin and broken. "Then why do you still hear my voice?" The fog surged forward, wrapping around her like water. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed whole. When the fog receded, she found herself standing in the parlor once more. The board sat before her, whole again, pristine as it had been the first night. And beside it, a single candle burned. The planchette moved of its own accord. S-I-T. She stared at it, her breath coming fast. "Why?" THEDOORMUSTBESEALED. Her eyes widened. "You said it could not close." NOTBYHIM. "Then by who?" BYOU. The whisper filled the room. Her father's voice, the children's, the hundreds buried beneath the house, all merging into one. "To close the door, you must take his place." Lydia backed away, shaking her head. "No, I won't." The board began to glow faintly, its letters bleeding light. The air turned electric, every hair on her arms rising. "You took his hand," the voices said. "You opened the way." The windows shattered inward, glass flying in a storm of shards. The fog poured through them, circling her, pressing tight. "Now you will stay." The last thing she saw was the planchette sliding to its final word. GOODBYE. When the sun rose over Hollow Vale, the fog thinned at last. The villagers who passed the manor that morning spoke of a strange calm that had settled over it. They said the windows were clear again, that a single candle burned in the parlor, and that, if one pressed their ear to the glass, they could hear the faint tapping of wood, slow, patient, endless. The game had begun again. When Lydia awoke, the light was soft, a pale gold that filtered gently through the curtains of the parlor. The storm had passed, the fog had lifted, and for the first time in days, Hollow Vale stood beneath a quiet sky. But the silence was not peace. It was the silence of expectation, like the hush before a choir breathes its first note. The spirit board rested on the table before her, unburned, unbroken. Its wood gleamed as though newly polished, and the air around it shimmered faintly with a strange, warm energy. Lydia's memories came slowly. The whispers, the fog, the voices calling her name. Yet beneath the fear was something else, a faint, glowing thread of understanding. Her father had not been cursed. He had been chosen, and now, so had she. The manor no longer felt hostile. Where before she had felt watched, now she felt accompanied. The shadows seemed to breathe with her, soft and steady, as if in rhythm with her pulse. She rose and approached the board. Its planchette rested on the word yes. "You brought me back," she said quietly. "Why?" The planchette moved at once, smooth as silk. THEKEEPERMUS. TANWERR. Whoa? Her brow furrowed. "Keeper? Of what?" THEDOOR. The door my father opened. THEDOOOR. BETWEN. Then her breath caught. Between life and death, the planchette slid to yes. A stillness filled the room, and she felt the air grow warmer. A faint glow began to spread across the board, not fire, but light, like starlight reflected on wood. She could hear faint voices now, not whispering but singing. Soft, distant, melodic. The sound drifted through the manor like wind through old glass. Lydia closed her eyes, listening. For the first time, the voices did not frighten her. They sounded almost gentle. "They're not trapped," she murmured. "They're waiting." The planchette moved again, slow and calm. FORGIVEA. Forgive who? ALL. The glow brightened until the whole board seemed alive, pulsing faintly like a heart. The air shimmered, and the dust on the shelves lifted into soft spirals of light. Lydia felt her father's presence beside her. Not cold or vengeful, but watchful, sorrowful, kind. "I see now," she whispered. "You never meant to bind them. You meant to set them free." Her fingers brushed the edge of the board. The planchette trembled beneath her touch, as though it recognized her. A voice, calm and resonant, spoke inside her mind. Every keeper must learn that the door is not a cage, but a bridge. And in that instant, Lydia understood. The board was never a tool of summoning. It was a map, a sacred threshold between two worlds. Her father had opened it without guidance, letting the lost wander through. Now, it was her task to guide them home. As night returned, she lit the candles anew. This time, The flames stood steady, golden and pure. The air shimmered softly, and the faint figures of the children appeared once more around her. Not ghastly, but radiant, like memories carved from light. "Will you rest now?" she asked. The smallest of them smiled. "If you will help us find the way." "I'm the Gowan Gayan, our very way." Lydia nodded, placing her hands on the planchette. Together, they began to spell names, places, prayers. Each word seemed to draw light from the air until the entire room glowed like dawn. The voices rose in harmony, the melody both mournful and beautiful. When the final candle burned out, the figures faded. The board cooled beneath her fingertips. For the first time, Hollow Vale was silent, truly silent. Days passed. The villagers spoke of seeing warm light in the manor's windows at night and hearing faint, distant music on the wind. No one dared approach, yet they all said the same thing. The valley no longer felt cursed. Within Maren Hall, Lydia kept vigil. The spirit board remained before her, its letters faintly luminous in the moonlight. She had become what her father could not. Not a summoner, but a keeper. She would listen when the lost called, and when they found peace, she would whisper the one word that had eluded the house for a century. Goodbye. Dawn crept over Hollow Vale like a soft breath. The mist that had haunted the valley for generations now hung only in the hollows of the trees, pale and weightless, gilded by sunlight. For the first time in living memory, the manor did not shiver beneath the wind. Its broken windows had been mended, its stones scrubbed clean by the passing rain. The ivy still clung to its walls, but instead of choking them, it bloomed. Tiny white flowers curled toward the light. Inside, Lydia Maren sat in her father's old chair, the spirit board before her. The board was different now. Its surface, once dark and splintered, shone faintly, carved with lines that seemed to breathe. The letters were clear and bright. The word goodbye no longer burned away, but lovingly restored. She had spent many nights since the seance guiding the voices that remained. Those who lingered, lost, afraid. One by one, they had crossed the threshold. The air had grown lighter each time, as though the house itself exhaled its grief. Now, only one voice remained, her father's. The morning light fell across the board as she set her fingers on the planchette. "Father," she whispered, "are you here?" The planchette moved almost at once. L-A-W-A-Y-S. Tears gathered in her eyes, though she smiled faintly. "You opened the door to help them, but you never found your own way through. Ando. Gone." The planchette circled yes. "I can help you," she said softly, "if you let me. I am P-R-O-U-D. Her throat tightened. "I know. By God. Youlistenned. I only did what you couldn't. THEDOOO. ISCLSINGAG. She felt the words hum beneath her fingertips. The board glowed faintly, golden light filling the carved letters. "Then this is goodbye," Lydia whispered. The planchette moved one last time. N-O. It paused. Then slowly, tenderly, spelled C-E-L-L-E. The board grew warm beneath her palms. The light expanded, filling the room until every surface shimmered like sunlight through water. She could see shapes in it, soft, radiant outlines of those who had been trapped here for so long. Children laughing, men and women smiling, hands reaching toward her, and her father standing among them. He looked younger now, his face unburdened by the fear she remembered. He raised his hand, a gesture of farewell and blessing in one. Lydia's tears fell freely. "Go," she whispered. "All of you, rest." The light flared, and then it was gone. The house stood still. The air was clear. The spirit board lay silent. Weeks passed. The villagers who ventured near Hollow Vale spoke of a strange peace in the air. The valley no longer carried the taste of iron or the whisper of old grief. The wind through the trees sounded like song. Sometimes, at dusk, a faint golden glow could be seen from the manor's windows. Those who dared to look closer swore they saw a woman seated by the parlor fire, her face calm, her hands resting on a polished wooden board. No longer haunt, no longer afraid. The keeper of Hollow Vale. As the years slipped quietly into legend, her story became one of mercy rather than terror. Travelers would tell it on foggy nights, how a young woman had faced the ghosts of her bloodline, not to destroy them, but to free them. And though few believed in spirit boards anymore, those who did would sometimes whisper her name before they began. A prayer, a promise. Let the keeper watch over this circle, and may no door open that love cannot close. Some say the board still remains in the manor, resting on the same table where Lydia once sat. But now, when the wind passes through the valley, it carries only the sound of laughter. Distant, fleeting, peaceful. The dead no longer call. They have found the light beyond the veil.
And that was tonight's story. Some tales end with silence, others never end at all. They just wait in the dark, waiting for you. You've been listening to Creepy Night, where every whisper tells a story, and every story leaves a shadow. Sleep well, if you can.